A very good morning to Dr. Kamarudin and my friends. Today, I'm going to talk about the development of education in Malaysia post-independence. So today, we are going to look at these elements, which is Rambutalis Report 1960, Education Act 1961, Paki Report 1964, Cabinet Committee Report in 1979, Education Act 1969, and Educational Development Master Plan EDMP from 2006 to 2010. So first, we are going to look into the Rambutalis Report 1960. The objective of Rambutalis Report 1960 is to speed up the process of national integration and unity. The Rambutalis Report was made to review the education policy in 1960 and became a basis to establish the Education Act 1961. Rambutalis Report support the Razak Report and became the basic to the formation of National Education Foundation like stated in Educational Act. So these are the elements that was stated in Rambutalis Report 1960, which is Malay language as the main language in school, pre-secondary school education, automatic promotion until Form 3, emphasize on religious and moral education, stress on 3M education, which is membaca, menulis, dan mengira. Stress on a strong spiritual education and the desire of elements of discipline. Stress on the Malaysian curriculum upper secondary education of two streams, which is academic and vocational. Opportunity to continue education from 9 years to 11 years. Facilitation of education management procedures to improve the overall quality of education. Next, we are going to look into the Education Act 1961. The objective of Educational Act 1961 is to unite all the races in Malaysia and to carry out the national education system. So this is some simple introduction of Education Act 1961. The Education Act 1961 was enacted pursuant to the Rambutalis Report of 1960. In turn, it was based on the Razak Report of 1956. Razak Report 1956 was suited in education system by Rambutalis Report 1960 and next become the Education Act 1961. Thus, the contents and points of Education Act 1961 is similar as the Rambutalis Report 1960. These are the content of Education Act 1961, which is no fees for lesson in primary school. Primary school becomes Sekolah Kebangsaan, SK, and Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan, SJK. The schooling age until 15 years old for continuation school where there are 15 or more Muslim pupils, religious class will be provided. The Education Act provides that at the request at least 15 pupils, a Tamil or Mandarin teacher will be provided from Standard 3 upwards to secondary schools. Emphasize on moral values. Provided trained teachers and education aids. Empowering the national language. The establishment of common curriculum. So next, we are going to look into the Paki Report 1964. This is the simple introduction of Aminuddin Paki. So Aminuddin Paki's full name is Aminuddin bin Paki. He was born on 6 January 1926 in Cemoh, Perak. On 1932, he went to school at Sekolah Melayu Cemoh. And for secondary school, he studied at Sekolah Anderson, Ipoh. He graduated from Sekolah Anderson in 1941. In 1952, he served in Sekolah Anderson. In 1953, he became a lecturer in Maktab Perguruan Sultan Idris, Tanjung Malim. In 1955, he involved in preparing the Laporan Pendidikan Razak. In 1960, he became the community advisor of Rambutalis Report 1960. In 1962, he was elected as the Chief Education Officer of Selangor and the Chief Education Advisor of Malaysia. In 1963, he established the Lembaga Peperiksaan Malaysia. In 1965, he passed away because of heart attack. So these are the statements in Aminuddin Paki Report 1964. He has suggested 12 government guidelines on the decline of Malay children in Aminuddin Paki's downside comment on Malay education. He was appointed as the director of the Federation of Malaysia a year after and introduced a National Education Council, the 1960 Aminuddin Paki Declaration. There are 9 members in the body, of which Aminuddin Paki is the chairman. This committee was formed to examine a variety of concerns. The first one is the reason for the exam result to enter the secondary school are weak and to find a way to overcome it. The second one is the reason behind the insufficient number of students in the national school who have entered the admission test for secondary school. The third one is the shortcoming of the Sijil Rendah Pelajaran Malay students and ways to resolve them. So next, we are going to look into the Cabinet Committee report, which is in 1979. Cabinet Committee report is also known as Mahathir Report. This was chaired by Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad. The committee was established in 1964 to examine the national education policy. It was to improve the established so that the objective to form a united and disciplined society that fulfill the labor requirement can be achieved. Cabinet Committee report was introduced in November 1979, and the committee found out that there's a lot of weakness that might prevent them from achieving high-quality education policy. Cabinet Committee report was formed based on the feedback and based on the Cabinet Committee report 1974. The formation of Cabinet Committees 1974 is because of the protest incident on May 13, 1969, Rukun Negara's establishment in 1960, the Rukun Negara's establishment in 1970, and the launch of the new economic policy in 1970. This encouraged the government to examine the education policy, before which neglected the unity among the races and social, economic, and political development to build up the nation. So these are the characteristics of Cabinet Committee Report 1979. First, it is stressed on 3M basic education, which is membaca, menulis, and mengira. Stressed on a strong spiritual education and the desired element of discipline. Stress on Malaysian curriculum. upper secondary education of two streams, which is academic and vocational. Opportunity to continue education from 9 to 11 years. Facilitation of education management procedure to improve the overall quality of education. Next, we are going to look into the Education Act 1996. These are the objectives of the Education Act 1996, which is the national language became the main medium of instruction under the national education system, besides being a compulsory subject for all schools and educational institutions. To further consolidate the national education system for the younger generation in accordance with the country's aspiration of making Malaysia a center of excellence for education. To outline the legislation related to education. So there are three general legislative provision, which is the National Philosophy of Education, which was proclaimed in 1988 and forms the underlying basis. The consolidation of the national education system to include the following, which is all level of schooling from preschool to tertiary education, all category of schools, government aided schools, private schools. So now I will show you the comparison between the Education Act 1961 and 1996. Education Act 1961, it was based on Razak Report 1956, and the main basis of Education Act 1961 is the establishment of national education system. For Education Act 1996, it was based on the national education philosophy, and to replace the Education Act 1961. So the main comparison of both Education Act is for Education Act 1961, only 15 Muslim students above the religious class will be provided. However, for Education Act 1996, religious class was compulsory in all education institutions. So this is the small question for you guys to answer. What will happen if Education Act 1996 was not established? So next, we are going to look into the education. So next, we are going to look into the Educational Development Master Plan, EDMP, from 2006 to 2010. So this is the Education Development Master Plan. The goals of this EDMP is to produce quality education for all through two main approaches, which is the first approaches and second approaches. The first approaches is to ensure the equity and the equality. So the strategies are give fair and just educational opportunity. Give the opportunity to master 3M, which is membaca, menulis, and mengira. The third one is improve ICT accesses. The second approach is to fully develop the potential of all schools, to fall within the excellent cluster, to achieve measurable success to chart our country and the education system on the world map. So the strategy of the second approach is to identify the cluster school from the following type of school, which is national school, national type school, boarding school, premier school, secondary technical school, national religious secondary school, centennial school, smart school, schools situated in Putrajaya and Cyberjaya. introduced various programs to enhance the strength and competitiveness of school in the education cluster. So these are the 6 main thrusts of this DMP, which is the first one, nation building. The second one, developing human capital. The third one, strengthening national schools. The fourth one, bridging the education gap. The fourth one, bridging the educational gap. The fifth one, enhancing the teaching profession. And the last one, which is accelerating excellence of education institution. So these are the strategies to achieve Vision 2020, which is Wawasan 2020. Vision 2020 emphasizes Malaysia as a fully developed country, which is developed in a very aspect, which is economically, politically, socially, spiritually, physiologically, and culturally. The national philosophy of education calls for developing the potential of individuals in a holistic and integrated manner, so as to produce individuals who are intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, and physically balanced and harmonious. Introduce the subject of Islamic studies and moral, which are compulsory for all the students. Increasing the intake of science students. Encouraging the use of computers and multimedia technology in educational institutions and providing the courses in information technology. The government is already in the process of setting up 19 pilot smart schools. These schools are one of the 7 flagships of the Multimedia Super Corridor MSC project and aim at transforming the education system from memory-based learning into simulative thinking and creativity through access modern technology. So that's all for me. Thank you very much. So before I end my presentation, this is the question that I would like you to answer, which is what have you learned from Aminuddin Baki that you should portray as your career as a teacher? So you can state your opinion and explain. Thank you.